Remember when lunchboxes were metal, TV had only 3 channels, and when the future meant bright chrome and rocket ships? Welcome to the Rocket Kid Chronicles by David Stafford.
Chapter 4. The Big Valley, LA's backyard, but with sprinklers. According to my parents, who, for reasons known only to themselves, loved sharing this fact at family dinners and with total strangers, I was conceived on their second wedding anniversary, October 10th, 1957. Apparently, the evening called for a cake, a modest toast with champagne, and, well, the creation of a human being. I've never asked what sort of gift exchange was involved, and frankly, I would rather not know the details. Let's just say that 9 months later, I arrived wrinkled, bewildered, and wondering why everyone kept calling me the souvenir. Soon after, when California was still pretending it had room for everybody, and architects were going through their great stucco period, my parents made another migration, from Los Angeles to North Hollywood. This transition marked the dawn of my Valley childhood. It wasn't quite a cross-country move, but it felt just as monumental. The Valley, in those days, resembled a sun-filled suburban Atlantis, sprawling and just barely real. We landed on Riverton Avenue, a sleepy residential street where the most exciting event each week was the trash pickup, unless someone overwatered their lawn, provoking a neighborhood dispute. The house they rented at 5313 Riverton had the usual Valley trimmings: modest yard, a front concrete patio, a screen door that creaked like a haunted saloon and slammed uncontrollably, and just enough shade to keep you from combusting in the summer heat. Meanwhile, the city was busy reimagining itself. Just a few years earlier, in 1956, they began carving up the hills above Hollywood to make way for the Hollywood Freeway, eventually pushing it over Highland Pass like an asphalt viper. The 101 became a concrete river of promise, if your idea of promise involved sitting in traffic behind a Buick sporting a "See the USA in your Chevrolet" bumper sticker. It sliced through Cahuenga Pass and spilled into the San Fernando Valley like a noisy herald of progress, ushering in a parade of commuters, drive-through restaurants, and tract homes with identical mailboxes. And so there we were, nestled in North Hollywood, where the streets were wide, the yards were square, and the sense of ambition was just vague enough to be comforting. To grasp the essence of where we'd landed, one must first understand how North Hollywood itself came to be. Back then, the Valley wasn't a punchline. It was a possibility. A place where one could rent a house, open a shop, and harbor the faint belief that everything would somehow sort itself out. Originally, North Hollywood bore the charming name of Lancashire, which sounded less like a town and more like something you'd accidentally step in while traversing a field. It was named after Isaac Lancashire, a 19th century rancher who, like many of his contemporaries, gazed upon 60,000 acres of sun-scorched dust and thought, "You know what this place really needs? Wheat." And so, wheat it was, until that became boring or unprofitable, usually both. At that point, someone had the brilliant idea of planting fruit trees instead. Peaches, apricots, walnuts, the kind of sun-soaked produce that made you forget the region had no water of its own. A town sprang up around this orchard utopia, filled with industrious folks, windmills, and a common belief that the Southern Pacific Railroad was the greatest invention since the wheel. But then came the roaring 1920s, bringing with them a contagion far more infectious than a blight or boll weevils: Hollywood fever. The inhabitants of Lancashire noticed that just over the hills, in a place called Hollywood, men in riding trousers and women with eyelashes that could double as ceiling fans were making films, raking in cash, and, most enviable of all, gaining fame. Meanwhile, Lancashire still boasted hitching posts and the unflattering fragrance of livestock. So, in 1927, likely after a couple of gin martinis and a marketing brainstorm, the town rebranded itself as North Hollywood. This was a bold move, given that it was neither directly north of Hollywood nor particularly connected to it. It was a bit like renaming your garage North Paris and expecting tourists to flock to it. Yet somehow, it worked. Sort of. People started to arrive. Developers threw up stucco bungalows as if they were a prize for speed. Actors moved in, mostly those whose roles bore names like gas station attendant number 2. But it was a start. Studios followed suit. Rail lines extended. And slowly but surely, North Hollywood transformed into a place that people had heard of, which in Los Angeles is often as good as being important. Today, the name Lankershim survives only in Lankershim Boulevard, a thoroughfare that meanders through the valley like a long sigh. It's lined with taco stands, vape shops, and signs proclaiming, "We accept EBT" in 6 languages. In many respects, it serves as a far more honest reflection of Los Angeles than any postcard decorated with palm trees could ever hope to capture. But once upon a time, it was just wheat, peaches, and a delightfully odd name that no one ever thought would one day be glamorous. And so, this would be my childhood home. In this place, I would acquire my first scabby knees, forge my first friendships, and master the precarious art of riding a bicycle, sometimes with a fellow human precariously perched on the handlebars. This was long before anyone gave much thought to safety equipment. Helmets? They were for astronauts, not for kids on Schwinns. The prevailing philosophy was that if you could still get up and walk after an accident, it didn't really count. It was also the place where I learned the elaborate social science of childhood friendship. That some kids were ideal for swapping trading cards, others for helping you dig pointless holes in the yard, and still others for daring you to ride across an old, mean lady's lawn. The latter group was also the most likely to get you grounded. The street was its own self-contained universe. You'd catch the distant whine of a lawnmower, droning on like a wasp trapped in a coffee can, occasionally sputtering when it encountered a patch of stubborn Bermuda grass. Somewhere down the block, a screen door would slam with that peculiarly hollow whap, resonating throughout the entire neighborhood. There was the cheerful ding-ding of the ice cream truck, a sound capable of summoning children from 3 different yards at once, followed by the frantic slapping of bare feet on hot pavement. From the next street over, a radio would be playing surf rock or Motown, slightly tinny, as if recorded in a shoebox. You might catch the pop and hiss of a neighbor's sprinkler, one of those rotating metal contraptions that ticked like a time bomb as it flung glittering arcs of water across the lawn. Occasionally, from somewhere unseen, you'd hear the lazy, grumpy bark of a dog convinced that every passerby was an imminent threat. And beneath it all was the steady hum of traffic on Magnolia Boulevard. Delivery trucks, Chevrolets with fins like aircraft, and the occasional impatient horn punctuated by the deep, deliberate rumble of a freight train crossing the tracks at the street's end, with a sound that shook through the pavement and settled deep right into your bones. It was a world that felt eternal, the kind of place you thought you'd never outgrow, until, of course, you did.
Stay tuned for more of the Rocket Kid Chronicles.
Up next, how great power comes with great responsibility.